This is the story of The Ugly Duckling, a fairy tale that was written by Hans Christian Andersen. The story begins like this. It was summer, and the countryside was very lovely. In the fields, the oats were still green, and the wheat was golden yellow. The hay was stacked in the meadows, and the shadowy woods were reflected in the lakes and ponds. And near a pond, in a quiet place in the tallest weeds, sat a mother duck on her nest. She was quite tired, for she'd been sitting on her eggs for many days. What was that sound? Yes, the eggs were hatching. There were 2 little ducklings. Mother Duck quacked with excitement. Now there were 6 ducklings. How proud Mother Duck was of her family. Soon all the eggs were hatched. No, not quite all. The biggest egg was still there. So Mother Duck settled down once more on her nest. She sat a long, long time. Then, finally, she looked at the big egg once more. Then she thought she heard something. Yes, there was another young one. The Mother Duck looked at him. Well, she thought, he doesn't look like my other ducklings. They all have yellow down and yellow bills. He has a dark bill, and he's much larger, too. Can he be a turkey chick? Well, said the Mother Duck, we'll find out when we go to swim in the pond. The next day they went to the pond. The big gray duckling led all the rest. Yes, the big gray one swam very well as the others. He is no turkey chick, said Mother Duck. See how well he swims. But he doesn't look like the others. The poor gray duckling was left to swim alone. Finally, Mother Duck called him and all the others. Let's all go into the farmyard, said Mother Duck. So into the farmyard they went. The little ducklings began to look around for something to eat. But the big gray duckling just stood still. He felt strange and lonely. A hen said, "You don't look like the other ducklings." The old goose hissed at him. The old turkey gobbled at him. And a duck said, "You're an ugly duckling." The poor duckling wanted to run away, but a rooster stopped him. "Yes, you are an ugly duckling," said the rooster. And so, in the days that followed, the poor duckling thought, I suppose I am ugly. And he tried to stay hidden near the barn. Oh, to be sure, he ventured out now and then, waddling along on his webbed feet to join the other ducklings in finding things to eat. Finally, one day, a big old duck saw him and rushed at him and chased him away. And then another duck ran after him, and soon all the chickens rushed at him. The ugly duckling was frightened. He ran as fast as he could, across the farmyard, through a hole in the fence, and out. On and on he went, past the cows in the meadow, until he came to a big marsh. Here, in the tall grass, he could hide his ugliness. And then he saw a wonderful sight. There, in the water nearby, were some big white birds, the most beautiful birds he had ever seen. He wanted to go to them, but he knew he was too ugly. Then he saw some wild ducks. When they saw the ugly duckling, they said, "You are very ugly, but it's a big marsh. You may stay with us if you like." And so the ugly duckling stayed in the marsh with the wild ducks. One day something happened. A hunting dog came into the marsh. There was a hunter, too. The ducks started to fly. The ugly duckling struggled to get out of the marsh. Across the fields he went. He didn't stop until he saw in the distance a little cottage. It was a very nice cottage with roses growing over the doorway. The ugly duckling walked toward the cottage. The door was open, so in he went. It was very cozy inside. This will be a safe place to sleep, he thought, and he sat down by the fireplace. The next morning, when he awoke, he saw a hen. Then he saw an animal he didn't know. It was a cat. When the old woman who lived in the cottage saw the ugly duckling, she said, "What on earth is that?" "Come here," she said, and she picked him up. "What an odd-looking duck you are," she said, "but you're quite big and plump. Perhaps now I shall have some duck eggs. Anyway, I shall keep you and we'll see." So the days passed, and the ugly duckling stayed at the cottage with the cat and the hen. But they didn't like him. "Can you purr?" said the cat. "No," said the ugly duckling. "Can you lay eggs?" said the hen. "No," said the ugly duckling, and he felt quite useless. "Then what can you do?" said the hen and the cat. "Well, I can swim," said the ugly duckling. "Then why don't you go where you can swim?" they asked. So he left the cottage and wandered away once more. He was larger now, for he had grown much during the summer. Yes, he was quite big, but he was still a lonely, ugly duckling. He looked about. Summer was over, and autumn had come. A raven cawed in the cold wind. The ugly duckling moved on while the autumn wind blew the leaves from the trees. Finally, he came to a pond, and there he stayed. The autumn slowly passed. Then the winter came. The pond was frozen over. The countryside was white under a covering of snow. Near the pond, in the shelter of some pine trees, the ugly duckling stayed. Sometimes he ventured out to look for food, leaving his tracks in the snow. But most of the time he spent in his shelter under the big pine trees. And then, at last, the snow melted. Spring came. The ugly duckling looked up at the bright sky. He looked at the beautiful spring blossoms. He looked at the sparkling pond. Now I can swim, he thought. He looked into the water, and what do you think? He saw himself as though in a mirror. Look, he was no longer an ugly duckling. He was a large white bird. Yes, he was a beautiful white bird, like those he had seen. Some children on the shore saw him and called out, "Look, a new swan!" Yes, he is the most beautiful swan of all. That's what the ugly duckling had grown up to be, a swan, a handsome white swan. The children fed him and were very friendly. He was no longer unwanted. He spread his snowy white wings. Then he slowly swam out to join the other swans in the pond. Now no one chased him or called him ugly. And so, at last, he was happy.